Hi, this is Ryan, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you one of my favorite vegan recipes. It's super easy and fast, it tastes utterly beautiful, and it's really nutritious and health boosting too. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the channel. I'm Dr. Ryan Williams, your host and the founder of Growing Pure, where we help people make vegan cooking and health fast, simple, and mind-blowingly tasty. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make an incredible recipe. We're doing smoky sweet potatoes. So we're going to have sweet potatoes oven roasted in a beautiful sort of marinade. They're going to get crispy and delicious. We're going to round that out with some black beans, tomatoes, and onions. And then we're going to do some lovely fresh guacamole too, and round it out on the plate with some fresh spinach and a sprinkle of pistachios. This recipe is so tasty. It's packed with nutrients, it's got tons of iron, vitamin A, it's got a good balance of macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbohydrate. It really is an all-rounder meal. And it's really easy and low maintenance too, which is ideal. And you can download the full written recipe and shopping list for this recipe by simply clicking the link in the description below. Okay, so let's get into the different components of our meal. First up, I've got these amazing sweet potatoes. I'm not even gonna peel these. There's great fiber in the skin and I quite like the taste of it too, and it saves loads of time. So I'm just gonna cut off any little nasty bits, but then I'll just chop it up. We're going to make a little bit of a marinade. So the base of this is going to be tahini, which is roasted ground sesame seeds. And we're going to make that lovely and smoky with some smoked paprika, a little bit of soy sauce in there for some saltiness too. And then this is going to be roasted in the oven. We're then going to do a little bit of a bean mix to go with that. So I've got some onions here, lovely, fresh, flavorful cherry tomatoes, and some black beans. And then I'm also going to do a really fresh guacamole. Really simple, it just takes a few moments to prepare because it's all raw. So I've got some avocados, lime, and coriander or cilantro. So first up, I am going to preheat my oven to 200 degrees Celsius or 390 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to get my sweet potatoes chopped up and get them coated in the marinade. So that oven roasting time of the sweet potatoes, that's the bottleneck in this recipe, but it's actually ideal because during that roasting time, we can get on with our guacamole and our beanie mix. So it's a really time efficient recipe because you're not being held up by anything. So let's get started on our sweet potatoes. Okay, perfect. So the oven is on, it's preheating away. So let's turn our attention to our sweet potatoes. So there's a couple of just little bits that I'm just going to get off here. But I don't need to be too precise. And I've already given these a good scrub underwater, so all the dirt and stuff is off them already. Okay, so now I'm going to chop these up into bite-sized pieces. The exact size you do is up to you. The smaller you do them, the faster they're going to cook though. But I think the size that I'm going to do them, maybe an inch, inch and a half, something like that. They'll probably take about 40 minutes to cook in the oven. One of the amazing things about sweet potatoes is they're really nutritious. There's a lot of nutrition in sweet potatoes, especially vitamin A. Tons of that, which is fantastic. Okay, so here is my amazing sweet potato, all cut up. So the next thing I need to do in this bowl here is make a little bit of a marinade. So I've got this tahini, it's going to be the base of this. This is quite a bit of sweet potatoes. So I'm probably going to want maybe 4 or 5 tablespoons, but I'm just going to eyeball the exact amount. We want to make sure there's enough marinade to give every piece of sweet potato a good sort of coating and covering. I'm also going to put in a little bit of this soy sauce. So it's really salty, so it's just going to give a good salty flavor. We don't want to use too much or it will end up being too salty. So a little splash. Maybe just like that. And then take a look at this beautiful smoked paprika. This is really going to give that amazing, intense, smoky flavor. So I'm going to use maybe, I think I'll start with 1 tablespoon, perhaps call it 2, 1.5 to 2. I quite like the smokiness. And now to loosen this a little bit, to make this sauce go a little bit further, I'm just going to put in a splash of water as well. And I'm just going to give this a good mix. So you can see that's still way too thick, so we're going to want some more water in there. We want it to nice and easily coat our sweet potato pieces with a kind of thin but a thorough covering of this marinade. And the smells here, this smoked paprika, tahini, is really, really delicious. Oh, I love it. Okay, now that's about what we should be looking for. Not super thin, but it's definitely pourable and it's going to coat these sweet potato pieces really nicely. All right, so I'm going to line a baking tray now with some baking paper to stop the sweet potato sticking, and then I'm going to put the sweet potato into this bowl, give them a good mix around, toss them around, and then get them out onto that baking tray and into the oven. Okay, so here are our sweet potato pieces, all beautifully coated in this amazing smoky tahini mix. So it's time to get these in the oven, and then I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes, and at that point I'll stir them. We want to keep them moving so they don't stick in one place. But the tahini will help with that. Aside from giving flavor and texture, the tahini is also going to help them stop sticking. So let's get these into the oven. All right, perfect. Our sweet potatoes are in the oven, so let's get cracking on our guacamole. So I've got 2 avocados here. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of a difference in ripeness. This one is really ripe and this one is quite underripe, so there's going to be a bit of a mix, but we work with what we've got. I've also got a lime, obviously a key element of guacamole. Really nice little tip. If your lime or lemon is kind of firm, what we want to do is roll it against our board, apply some pressure, and you'll feel it kind of give and soften under your hand. And this way it's going to liberate a lot more juice when we squeeze the juice out of it. And then, of course, I've got some lovely coriander or cilantro. Really, really nice. So I'm going to chop that up, mix that in. And then we're just going to put a little bit of salt. I've got some low sodium salt, so I use that, and some cracked black pepper. And that's really all we need for our guacamole. If you're a bit of a spice fiend, you can put chili in it, and sometimes I do that, but I'm gonna leave it kind of cool for this recipe. Okay, to begin with, let's get going on these avocados. Now you'll probably notice that I've quite intentionally not prepared quite a few of the elements of this dish right at the start. I obviously did the sweet potatoes, but that's because I wanted to get those in the oven. So I'm going to do the prep of some of the other elements of the dish whilst the sweet potatoes are cooking. And that essentially is going to allow us to get our meal out onto the table as quickly as we can. And I'm all about being fast and efficient in the kitchen. I don't want to spend more time than I have to. Even though I do quite enjoy it, I want to do it in as efficient way as I can. Now, under normal circumstances, I would just mash up an avocado with a fork to make guacamole, but this one is pretty tough, so I'm going to chop it up. But with the other ripe one, this should be okay actually, because it should give a bit of different texture. Okay, let's cut open our lime and squeeze some juice in. So good, fresh lime, I just love it. Adds that beautiful kind of zingy acidity to our guacamole that we really need. I think I'll probably just use half the lime for now. We don't want to make it too limey. And now I'm just going to finely chop up a little bit of this coriander. We don't need to pulverize it. We don't want to get all that flavor out onto our board. But just reasonably finely chop it, like that. Crack of black pepper and a little dash of salt. Now I'm just going to mix this together. All right, this is looking good. I'm going to give it a little taste. Make sure that the salt, the level of acidity from the lime is right. Oh, it's really good, really fresh. All right, so I'm just going to leave this to one side. It's a little bit more chunky than I would usually do it, but that's fine. It's going to be that lovely fresh addition to this meal. So just leave this to one side, and in a couple of minutes, I will have had 20 minutes of our sweet potato in the oven, and I will just check it, give it a stir, and maybe adjust the oven temperature if we need to. Oh my gosh, they're looking good. Wow. Let's give them a little stir. Starting to crisp up. That marinade is really doing its job there. Almost gets like a little bit chewy in places with that marinade. You can see it's crisping and caramelizing on the surface of the sweet potatoes, which is exactly what we want. And these are cooking at just the right rate, I think. If they've been cooking too fast or starting to burn, at this point I would have turned down the oven. And depending on your oven, you may need to do that, or conversely, you may want to ramp up the temperature a little bit at this point. So another 20 minutes or so, and in that time, we're going to get on with our beans, tomato, and onion. All right, amazing. So the sweet potatoes are looking really good halfway through the time. I've just put them back in the oven for another 20 minutes. So it's time to get on it's time to get on with the next bit of our recipe. So onions, let's get these prepped, and then we can get them cooking. And as they're cooking, because the onions take the longest, we will prep our tomatoes. Okay, amazing. Our onions are finely chopped, as you can see, and I've got a pan here over a medium heat. So let's get these going. I'm just going to put a splash of water in, just to help them stop sticking. What I tend to do is just put in a splash of water every now and then, as you need it, just to stop that sticking. Now we'll just want to keep a low to medium heat here, as we just cook away these onions. Just sweat them down until they're nice and translucent. But at this stage, let's season with some low salt and some black pepper. One thing to be aware of actually there though is, if you're using black beans from a can, it may be in brine, which is salted water, so you may get a lot of salt from the beans. So if that's the case, if you do look at your cans and they're in brine, then don't add too much salt at this stage. It's looking really good. Now what I'm going to do is leave these to gently cook away, and whilst they're cooking, I'm going to be chopping in half my cherry tomatoes. All right, these onions have been cooking away quite happily for about 5 minutes or so now. Just been keeping an eye on them, stirring them every now and then, and adding in a splash of water. So here are these beautiful tomatoes. Just look at them. I love the color. So much lycopene in there. That's one of the naturally occurring compound. That's a natural pigment in tomatoes. Gives it that incredible red color. So now we want to cook these tomatoes and onions together, along with, of course, a little bit of ground cumin. I think that'll just add a little bit of great flavor here. Perhaps 1 to 2 teaspoons. I think that's probably about fine. We don't want to turn it into sort of an intensely flavored curry or something at this point, but I think we do want a little bit of flavor here. Splash in a touch more water. We don't need to do this much more because the tomatoes are going to liberate a lot of water as they cook as well. Now, if you've been following this the way that I've been doing it, you should find that everything is ready. The guacamole, our tomato and bean mix, and the sweet potatoes are all ready at about the same time. This is the ideal scenario where being really efficient with our time. We're not wasting any more time than we have to. So during the next 10 minutes or so, as these tomatoes and onions cook, I'm going to open my cans of black beans and just drain them and rinse them. And then the beans can go in here. All right, so my timer for the sweet potatoes has just gone off. They're looking ready, so I could actually stop them now, but I want to get them really crispy. So I'm just going to leave them in for 10 minutes or so more until my tomatoes and onions and beans are ready. And then there's no harm in doing that. We can leave it a little bit longer in the oven if we need to. Okay, you can see how the tomatoes have blistered and sort of smushed down. I don't know if that's the technical word, smushed, but that's the one I'm going with. So, and this is looking really nice now. So let's get these black beans in here. Black beans are just incredible nutritionally. I mean, it's the case with all beans really, but so much fiber in them, which is amazing. There's loads of iron, loads of protein. They're just a nutritional powerhouse. And we tend to find that the blue zones, these are these locations, these geographies in the world where people have lived generally much longer than others around them. They've been interesting populations to study because the question is, well, what is it about these particular people that is making them live so much longer? And there's a lot of factors involved, for example, social communities and this sort of thing, but one of the big ones is the diet, and particularly they tend to eat beans very often. So we want to be getting beans in our diet if we want to live a long, healthy life, and they're delicious as well. So you can see here, we've got this lovely kind of mix of veg and beans. It's just going to be a really nice addition to our plates. What I am going to do is give this mix a little taste and just make sure that the salt level is right. I think the salt's good. I think I would even go for a bit more of that cumin though. I'd say the cumin is not quite powerful enough. So let's go with that. I quite like the taste of cumin. If you don't want it as strongly as that, you can just stick with sort of 1 or 2 teaspoons. I'm going to go with a little bit more here. Great. So this is perfectly cooked, tasting great. The sweet potatoes are done, the guac's done. So all that's left now is to just plate this up. It's going to be beautiful. Wow, this is looking so good already. Just look how the colors are popping. And we've only got 2 of the elements on the plate. Beautiful sweet potatoes. Look how it's kind of gone, the dressing's gone a little bit crispy and flaky. These are going to be lovely little nuggets of taste in our mouth. Then we've got that lovely sustenance from our onions, tomatoes, and black beans. Okay, so let's get a bit of our super fresh, limey guac on here. So this is quite a big portion. This is probably going to feed easily a family of 4, and you'd probably have leftovers. So you could quite happily scale this down if you just wanted to do it for, you know, yourself or for a couple. But I always tend to prefer cooking in bigger portions because if you're investing the time to cook, it takes the same amount of time to roast 3 sweet potatoes as it does 1. So you may as well do it in a bigger portion. Then you've got leftovers for lunch, for dinner the next day, whatever you want. So you don't have to cook every night of the week. You can just do it 2 or 3 times a week. All right, that's our guacamole. Few fresh spinach leaves here. Love getting greens in wherever I can. Just gonna put a couple of these coriander leaves. It's a bit of a garnish to look really pretty. I'm gonna take a little bit of this lime and just squeeze that round. That little pop of extra acidity I think will be really good. You don't have to do this, this is optional, but I think it will taste really nice. And then finally, for that extra bit of crunch, we really like to have textural diversity in our meals. What I mean is, if the mouthfeel of our food is the same the whole way through, it gets a little bit boring, sensorially boring. So even if it tastes really nice, so what we want to do is have a few different textures in there, and a few nuts like this, a few pistachios. It's going to just give that amazing little crunch to our meals. Don't have to go too crazy, just a few scattered over. Perfect. Wow. Take a look at that. This is just a great meal. It didn't take me that long. Beautifully tasty. Let's take a closer look at it. It is definitely time that I gave this meal a taste. I can't wait. Okay, trying a little bit of sweet potato first. Oh, smokiness is really good. So tasty. Really hits the spot. That cumin in the black beans and tomatoes, absolutely great. Really just amps them up and stops them from being bland. Perfect, fresh guacamole and some lovely spinach. And that little crunch too from the pistachio. This is such a delicious meal. Please go away and try this recipe for yourself. It's fast, it's simple, and it's super adaptable as well. It's going to make cooking and eating healthy vegan foods really automatic and straightforward for you. You don't have to spend ages in the kitchen, and you can do a big portion, feed a family, or meal prep for yourself. Ideal for that. Remember to please click the link in the description below, and you can get the full written recipe and shopping list for this recipe so you can make it for yourself really easily, totally free. Just go for it, enjoy. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.